Hey guys, I know it's been a long day, so I'm going to talk really fast with a funny accent to keep everyone on their toes. I've got a cool video too, so I'll keep you all awake. Charity Water, we're a startup, non-profit, based just down the street in New York City. I've got the one train up here today. And we exist because there's nearly 800 million people living without access to clean and safe drinking water. Really hard to think about when we live in the developing world. This is not a cause that any of us have probably personally been touched by or have seen, but it's very fundamental. There's a stat out there that lack of access to water and basic sanitation kills more people each year than all forms of violence, including war. So I know everyone in this room would like to see world peace, or I hope so. If not, you should probably leave. We could save more lives this year and every year if we got everybody a tap and a toilet than if we created world peace. That's completely doable. We know how to do that. So one of the things we're trying to do with Charity Water, though, is reinvent charity while we're tackling this huge problem. And we do that with a few key brand values. First of all, we have a 100% model. Every single cent that we raise publicly, we use to directly fund clean water projects. We fund staff salaries, ink in the office printer, lunch. That's why I got the one train up here today. I didn't pay for a taxi. From a separate budget funded by major donors. So it's this fundamental brand value. It's a key message that's really valuable to us. Secondly, we do it through proof. Every water project we've ever built, and just over 5 years in, that's 6,500 water projects, we've marked on Google Maps, GPS, photos, put it out there so that donors can see their impact. And the third piece is brand. We really want to build an epic brand. There's a great quote from Nick Kristof that I think is applicable today about how there's brands of toothpaste that are sold with more sophistication than all the world's life-saving causes. And we see that to be quite true. So from day one, we've been focused on design. In our history, our first hire was a water programs person after our founder. The second hire we made was a designer and a storyteller, because it's so fundamental to who we are. At the same time, our founder, Scott, our CEO, is a storyteller. He's our chief storyteller. You'll see him in a video in a moment, but it's really fundamental to our story that we can go out there and share this story to get it on people's minds and try to break through digitally. At the same time, the $60 million we've raised in 5 years, 75% of it has come through digital channels. And this has really been driven through storytelling. So I wanted to share one of our pieces of content so you can see what we're about. One of the things that we do every year since we first started out is a live drill. We go to the field, somewhere we're doing work in the developing world. We film in real time one of the wells we're building being built, cut it together on the ground in a village somewhere, upload it via satellite, and then send it out to all of our supporters. One, it's really cool content. Two, it's about inspiring them and really having them understand and seeing their impact, seeing where their money goes in real time. So we do this every year on our birthday, September 7th. Back in 2010, we visited a country called Central African Republic to try to hit water in a village called Mwale. Now, CAR, probably a handful of us don't know where it is on the map. It's a small country right in the heart of Africa. It's about the size of Texas, but there's about 2 miles of paved roads in the entire country. Mwale, the village where we went in September 7, 2010, it's about 18 hours deep into the jungle right down near the DRC border. Very isolated, and the people we were trying to help there, our partner Jim, had been trying to bring water there for several years. Now, back on September 7th, 2010, our live video that we pushed out from the field, we pushed out via Facebook to hundreds of thousands of people, was a failure. We didn't hit water. Typically, the scenes from our live drills are joyous celebrations of life-changing for everyone. This year, it was a failure. People responded to it very positively, though. The video I'm about to show was when we returned to this village, Mwale, in June of last year, and so I'd love to throw it up now and you'll see the story. It'd be great if we could kill the lights a little bit as well. I'm glad you guys like it. That's my favourite of our stories. I'm not actually the storyteller, though. My job's to get a lot of people to see it, so we've got a great team back in the office. Wanted to share a few things about this story, this video in particular, the why and the how of it, as well as a few tips that you might find applicable. First thing I think is really interesting about this compared to a lot of content I see out there, and my background's an agency guy, and I've seen a lot of really crappy corporate videos on YouTube that no one shared. You don't all have Kyrie Irving like Pepsi. One of the first things about this was we had no ROI target for this film. We weren't trying to drive fundraising. It was purely, firstly and foremost, about the story, about building an epic story that would inspire our base. And secondly, it was about helping every one of our donors and fundraisers for this campaign see their impact. This well was funded by $1 million fundraising campaign from 1,000 different fundraisers, lots of people giving up a birthday and asking for donations instead of gifts, 6 months before we shared this story. We were reporting back to them because of how important it is for us that every donor sees their impact. And part of what guides us on that, there's a great TED talk that I'd recommend to anyone, especially if you're grappling with your brand story, from Simon Sinek, Where's the Why? That Simon's done a bit of work with our team, but the why for Charity Water. Now, our what is about bringing every person on the planet clean drinking water, but there's about a dozen organisations that do that. None of them are like us. None of them are storytellers. Our difference, our why, is having people see their impact. And for us, this is really fundamental from this story. The other important thing here, we had pretty senior time here. We had a small team, and I'll talk about the how, but we had our CEO and founder, our creative director, and myself, our digital lead. So half of our small executive team, we only have a staff of 30, was in the jungle of CAR for a week. And as our digital lead, I'm not very effective without the internet. So, but we were here for this story, to share this story and push it out there. The other important thing is we were completely ready for failure. If we couldn't get a great story, if the well hadn't worked again, if there wasn't a story from the ground, we would have come back empty-handed. And we were okay with that. If we couldn't get inspiring content, we wouldn't have pushed anything out at all. A great rule for social media these days is if you don't have anything interesting to say nothing at all. We don't post a lot on Facebook for that very reason. A little bit of the how. We had just one shooter, an editor, with us, a really great freelancer called Paul Pryor. He's at Still Not Sharp in Twitter. If you ever want to hire him, he's awesome. Scott was really our story lead. Basically sitting around a campfire every day for a week with an iPad, working out what the story was on the day as it evolved on the ground. Our creative director got involved, and that was it. It cost a lot of travel to get out there, but on the ground equipment costs and whatnot, this was a couple of $1,000. So very, very easy for us to do. We then started editing it on the ground in the village, which is a pretty cool scene when you've got a whole bunch of Apple Macs out and about 60 kids from a Bayaka village trying to work out what's going on. Drove back to the airport. Our filmographer Paul edited it on the plane as we flew from Bangui back to Paris. And then my job was to upload it, which actually ruined my one night in Paris for the last 5 years, where I had McDonald's for dinner and sat in a Best Western internet room watching a progress bar do this. So pretty simple, really. Like, it can be simple to get a great story if you invest the energy. The first thing I always think of when I talk to brands about Charity Water, we're very good storytellers. We have an amazing creative team. Do you have great talent? Who is your chief storyteller? Can you give them freedom to do great work, first and foremost? So a few tips that I think stick around. The first thing for us with a lot of these pieces of content is about taking our story and making it their story and trying to build assets that our audience can pass along. Now, this delighted 1,000 people whose money was directly tied to this project, but our hope is that they all shared that with their audience. I actually tweeted while I was listening to Shiv before, it's funny how similar Pepsi and Charity Water's digital strategy is at a really high level from a very tiny brand to a very, very large brand, in that I'm very interested in what happens on the news feeds of 1,000 people. On Facebook, I'm not interested in what happens on facebook.com/charitywater. I care about 1,000 people today who are out there sharing campaigns and sharing our content with their friends, the people they influence most in the world. It's very important to know your fundamental brand story first and foremost. For us, see your impact is at the core. We use that to make a lot of decisions. If you're just running off doing cool bits of content and bits of videos here and there that aren't rooted in the purpose of your brand, you're probably wasting time. We invested a lot of time and effort in this video, but it was right at the core of what we're about, helping people see their impact. The other piece, I think, is around talented people, around giving them freedom to do great work. And finally, think about story first. Now, we've never had a conversation internally about like ROI or how much we invest in our videos or how much time and where we get around about it. We're very lucky to do that. That's the luck of having a CEO as a chief storyteller. I've got to fight my creative team to do less pieces of content so that they can polish them. But don't always worry about the funds and about the ask. The easiest thing in the world would have been to have a direct fundraising ask at the end of this, and I guarantee it would have really kind of spoiled a big part of the story.